Welcome to this webinar about powerful KPIs. This webinar is being watched in South Africa, Mexico, Central America, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, and other countries. We are very thankful of having a diverse audience today. Nowadays, the term key performance indicator is part of any company's jargon. There is a vast academic bibliography on the subject, and it would appear that all has been said about it. Despite those facts, there are many companies still fighting fires, having difficulties to fulfill all their potential, immersed in a whirlwind of activities and not improving on an ongoing basis. In our today's session, we will discuss reasons for this to happen and what might be the countermeasures to it. Our intention is to be thought-provoking and challenge a little the paradigms around the process of designing KPIs. We would love that you leave this webinar questioning the way KPIs are selected or designed in your team and organization. If you find that they are powerful KPIs, wonderful. But if you find that there is room for improvement, then fantastic. And if you can improve them by yourself, even better. Please send us your questions during the webinar. We have enabled the chat box for you to write all the questions that you may have. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar to respond any query that you probably will have. So we also shared at the end of this session an item of interest for all of you who stay until the end. So thank you, and let's kick off. My colleague, Dr. Ian Madison from our holding company CDIMA, joins me today to talk about this and to offer some insights. Dr. Matheson is PhD in gas kinetics from St. Andrews University in Scotland, has been a consultant in world-class practices since 1990, when the West started to take an active interest in the success demonstrated by top Asian companies. He has given advice to thousands of leaders in different sectors all around the globe, and he is managing director of CDIMA, serving the Americas, Middle East, including India and Africa. He is also one of the architects of our philosophy mission-directed work teams, which has been implemented in more than 3,000 sites. So thank you, Ian, for being with us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Rosa. It's wonderful to be here. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of my experiences with our listeners from around the world.
Great, Ian. Powerful KPIs. Are there powerless KPIs?
Well, Rosa, to be honest, I don't think so, but some of the KPIs I've seen are pretty useless. Many fall into the category of monitoring performance. And if we monitor performance, we're just watching things happen. We want to manage performance. And the better we manage the performance, the more powerful are the KPIs. Let me give you a couple of examples. I've seen admin departments, safe working environment, and they have a safety goal. How many accidents have we had? Really, what benefit is that to safe practices in the company? I've seen HR departments who measure employee engagement in a survey once a year. Their KPI is employee engagement score. Once a year, how are they going to get better? Really, we've got to look at managing performance. I've seen HR departments measuring the number of training days delivered. What good is that for the company? There's no indication if the days are valuable training days, if the delegates actually understood. It's clear many companies need help. They need help, and I'm hoping that this masterclass will cause you to think a little more before just rubber stamping your KPI. Remember, the objective is performance management. It's to improve the operational performance at the level where we can make a difference. Not at the executive, at the operational level. I hope to give numerous examples of KPIs I've seen over the years. And I'm sure some of our listeners are going to say, uh-oh, yeah, that's what we do. And I'm hoping our listeners will recognize these and start to think, you know, I could do it better.
Okay, Ian, but how can we power up KPIs? Would you say that a consultant is needed for that?
Not necessarily. But ask yourself, why do we call a consultant? We call a consultant because the consultant has been there before. He has insight. He has experience. He's on the outside looking in. And so often, especially in this field, experience is key. I remember when I started, somebody told me that to be an effective consultant, you need typically 7 years minimum experience. Why? To give you credibility. The young graduate from college might give the client the right answer, but he hasn't seen it all. The consultant with the experience has succeeded and he has failed. And he's seen both sides and he talks with conviction. I guess I've done 30 years of this. I hope there's something that I can share. And I hope to be able to illustrate my points with examples that I've actually seen. You know, when I started this field, world class, we looked at initiatives like preventive maintenance, to replace breakdown maintenance. We looked at statistical process control. We looked a bit at performance measures. We looked at problem solving. But that was about it. Since then, the whole field of lean has grown. The incorporation of people initiatives, it's changed our field dramatically. We're working in a different space. But having seen that change gives you more experience. What I hope to do is to share some of my learnings. The story is too long to give all the answers to everyone, but I'll try and help you by seeing what is good and what is bad, so that you can start seeing powerful KPIs on your own. And if you can see your own KPIs, you don't need a consultant. Consultant might help you to do it a little better. But I want all my companies that I visit to be able to look at their KPIs and say, we're getting there.
Great. I'm really looking forward to this because it's all about adding value, isn't it?
Absolutely, Rosa, absolutely.
In your experience, what would be the most important function of KPIs in the operational level?
People ask me, what's the difference between operational level and the company? We know that almost every company has company goals. They've got strategic imperatives. They have goals they're trying to achieve. But not infrequently, I get to the front line and the workers are just doing a job. They're working in an office. They're working in a warehouse. They're working in a laboratory. And they don't have goals. Only the managers have goals. Now, we all know the famous adage, if you don't measure it, they can't manage it. But these are the people who are managing. Of course, they must have a measure. But is that enough? No, it's not. I told you we needed experience. And I've seen numerous examples where goals were set with the best intention for those delivering results, but they didn't work. Peter Wickens, author of The Ascendant Organization, and other books, The Road to Nissan. Peter Wickens told me once, he said, if you don't measure it, they won't manipulate it. And he said, you've always got to keep this in mind. Is your goal driving the right behavior, or will it be manipulated? Let me give you a couple of examples from my own experience. If a factory or a processing plant or whatever is not delivering what's expected, we design efficiency measures. In a factory, efficiency is largely impacted by breakdowns, downtime, whatever. And so we say, let's manage efficiency as our KPI, production efficiency. What do I find? I find that the factory runs, we've produced the number of units of product A that our planners requested, but they keep running until they have a breakdown. What does that mean? It means that the overall factory efficiency has gone up. They look better, but I'm left with products that I didn't want, and I don't have time to produce product B. And we're paying them a bonus? It's not right. A far better measure, a more powerful KPI might have been conformance to production plan. But the goal was set with good intention. Another widely abused KPI is OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. Such a powerful KPI for diagnosing where our company problems are. And yet the number of times I've seen OEE used to compare this manager against this one, this line against this one, this factory against this one. So what did they do? We have a breakdown. That's bad. But we say, let's plan the training session for that time, so we haven't lost any time. Sure, we haven't lost any time, but we've hidden the breakdown. The measure is not driving the right behaviors. I worked in a factory where we were using returnable bottles and refilling them. Now, bottle breakage is a cost, a heavy cost for factories like this, and we collect the bottles from the trade, and sometimes the bottles are defective. And if we break too many bottles, it's bad. Now, if we charge those broken bottles to production, then it impacts on their performance. If we charge those broken bottles to distribution and say, why did you uplift and credit those defective bottles, then they will lose. So who do we charge? The guys will work it out so that the people who get charged are those who don't have it on their performance bonus.
Yeah.
They abuse it. Now, my examples are mostly production because most of my life has been in the production environment, but it's everywhere. You must have read recently of the incident in the United States where thousands were fired from Wells Fargo Bank. They put in a KPI. We must see how many new accounts we can open. And in the end, it was abused. Thousands of new accounts were opened for people who didn't want them, didn't even know they were being opened, because that was the KPI. That's what their managers said you must try and do. And it drove the wrong behaviors. This is what I mean. We've got to have experience, because every one of those KPIs was well-intentioned. But once we set them, we fell into a trap. Experience is everything. Even good goals can come out and bite us.
Yeah, it is very interesting for me that we want our people focused on important things. But even when we have good intentions, the focus can be deviated to things that are not really making us to do progress in the company.
Exactly, and this is where experience comes in. We've seen it before. Like project management, the more experience we have, the better we manage a project.
Goal setting is not a case of one size fits all. Based on your experience, can you give us some guidelines to select better targets for our teams?
Yeah, you're so right. Isn't it a pity we couldn't find that silver bullet? The KPI which works in this department always. But we can't. Every situation is different. Leonard Cohen, one of my favorite singers, sings about the dealer who's looking for the card that is so high and wild, he'll never need to deal another. We'd love to find that KPI. But we can't, so let's work at it. First, a couple of guidelines. A couple of guidelines that I think we've got to understand before we move on. Number one, don't get distracted by semantics. You know, I've heard arguments, discussions. What should we call this? Is it a measure? Is it a metric? Is it a goal, an aim, a target, a KRA, a KPI? So what? That's not the point. We know what we're trying to achieve. If I'm a courier company, I'm trying to deliver packages. I'm in a hospital or a clinic, I'm trying to heal patients. I'm a pawn shop or a bank, I'm lending money. And I'm trying to do it better, cheaper, faster. So my rule number one, don't get distracted by semantics. Okay. Focus on what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Number two, don't get confused by where the KPIs are. We set goals in many areas of our lives. We set personal aspirations. What would I like to achieve? Important, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're looking at goals that help a business perform. And as I've said before, we're looking at operational KPIs at the level where we make a difference. Not at senior level, where sure we've got goals, but we don't make a difference. We're measuring how our company has performed. So there are similarities, but focus on where we're trying to go. Now you ask me, how are we going to do it better? There's a whole bunch of general rules. They don't always apply, but they often do. Number one, we've got to make sure that the measure we're looking at is an improvement goal. It takes us to a better place. If I top up my swimming pool when the level goes down, that's a very important thing to do, to measure the level. But at the end of the year, I'm the same place as I was now. Topping up the toner in my photocopier, it takes me nowhere. These are measures. I spoke about semantics. These are measures, but they're not the powerful KPIs that I want.
Okay.
So number one, will it take us to a better place in terms of our company's strategic objectives? Number two, the team that is given the goal must be able to make it happen. You can't give sales volume to a finance team. You can put it in their bonus, and they're happy, they get a bigger bonus at year end, but it can't be their goal. They must have what we call line of sight. Tip number three, in line with these SMART goals that we've heard about so often, the target must be achievable. But this is a skill as well. We don't set goals that are easy. We like to set stretch targets, but our system cannot punish people who didn't make an outrageous stretch target. We recognize them for having been ambitious in setting it, and the management must recognize this. Next tip, number four. Every goal that I have at my level must be a driver for the goals at the next level. And they in turn are drivers for the goals at the next level until we get to the board of directors. I can't have an independent goal. Wouldn't it be nice to do this? We call this goal alignment. And so the goals must drive the next level, but they must not be replicated. If I have the same goals at two levels, there's something wrong. Who's accountable? Who's driving it? It should be at a single level and help achieving the goals of the next level. Number 5, time buckets. We must choose the shortest practical time bucket for our measurement. Monthly is better than annual. Weekly is better than monthly. Daily is better than weekly. And shiftly is better than daily. The shorter the time bucket, the more chance we have of detecting variability so that we can take appropriate action. Number 6, and this is an important one too. I hate complex goals. I see people who have indices. You know, this is the quality index, this is the sales index, this is the marketing index. And the marketing index is an index of how many people responded to the ad, how many attended this, how many did that. That's hopeless. If half of the elements went up and half went down, the index is the same and I've learned nothing. Focus on the most important one and make it simple. Part of this same tip is really, we don't need to turn everything into a percentage. You know, if I'm running a restaurant, I don't want to know that 4% of the clients complained about their food or their service. I want to know we had 3 complaints, unhappy clients, and we take action and we prevent it happening again. And so many people will say, but what's the percentage complaints divided by the number of patrons? Who cares? Our focus is on improvement. You know, the fire brigade, they don't measure the percentage of houses burning. They say we have 5 fires simultaneously and we've only got 4 fire trucks. We need to borrow one from the next village. And they don't take it as a percentage. Crazy. Number 7, the goals for a team are the important goals. I don't care if Joe here underperformed today and Sam here performed exceptionally well. If the whole team did not deliver, we've done badly. If the whole team delivered, we've done well. Sports teaches us that. And so often, I find people measuring the individuals instead of looking at the whole team. The whole team works for us. And if there's an underperformer, we're all there to help that person achieve. Lastly, another very, very important one is that lead indicators are far more powerful than lag indicators. If we can identify what we control to get the results we want, we're onto a winner. But if we wait until the accidents have happened, the customer complaints have happened, the truck has broken down or whatever, the patient has relapsed, it's too late. So that's a list of general rules.
It is always surprising for me to see how often it occurs that teams fall into goal replication instead of goal alignment. So it's not that obvious, but it's there. It's a danger that is always there. So
absolutely.
That was very good. Okay, a question I am asked very often is how many KPIs does a team need? And how should they be prioritized? Any insight on that one?
Well, I think the West was introduced to this through Suzaki's book many, many years ago. His book, The New Shop Floor Management, 1993, I think it was, and The New Manufacturing Challenge, 1987. And he introduced the West to this little package, QCDSM he called it, quality, cost, delivery, safety, and morale. Now, some of the names of the elements have changed in the intervening years, but there's a lot of wisdom in there. And I believe he was spot on. Every team needs a quality goal. Are we doing things right? Every team needs a speed goal. Are we delivering at the rate the business expects of us? Every team needs a cost goal. We're getting paid. We're using company assets. Are we using them efficiently? And then we get into safety and morale. Well, safety today has grown and grown. Today, instead of simply safety, we would say it is safety, health, and environment of the workforce and the community. So it's all important, but it must be in there, in our goals. And lastly, the people element. Are we developing our people, treating them with respect, listening to them? And I believe all 5 of those headings must feature in our KPIs. To miss any one of them is to deliberately blindside ourselves. But then, how many, you asked? I was told many, many years ago that a typical frontline worker is controlling typically maybe 300 measures. And I was told to think about driving a car. What are the variables I have when I drive the car? I can determine how far forward my seat is, how far back, what angle, how high is my headrest, what angle is each of the vents, what radio channel am I listening to, what temperature is the air conditioning, what about the bass and treble on my car radio. There are so many things I'm controlling. But are they important? Not so much. What is important is how close I get to the car in front, how fast am I driving, which lane am I in. We have a handful of important ones and many unimportant. And our goal setting is like that. We have important and less important. And ideally, I would like to see us select the most important goal under the headings of quality, speed, cost, safety, morale. That gives us 5. If you twist my arm, I'll let you have 6 or 7. But really, we can't focus on more than that. The other 295 are important, but they are not powerful KPIs. But remember, we're not ignoring them. I like to use the example of oil and petrol in a motor car. You're driving your car, you run out of oil. The oil warning light comes on, you ignore it. You drive on until the engine seizes. You get out of the car, you walk to the gas station. I'm afraid there's not much you can do. Rent another car, phone your friend. But if you were driving along the road and you ran out of petrol, the car would also stop. You'd get to the gas station, you'd come back with a jug of gas, and you'd start your car and it goes. So we ask our audience, which is more important, oil or water? Oil, of course, it's critical, they all answer. So which one do we measure on our dashboard? Petrol. You see, just because it's one of the items that is important doesn't mean that it's a KPI. The KPIs are the things we're trying to improve, not a list of everything we measure. So what do we do? On a control panel, you're controlling the traffic in Chicago or whatever it may be, you have a massive panel. And whenever there's a problem somewhere, a light will flash. And you'll take action. Every one of those lights represents something that is important. But by using the flashing light, we see the problem. That's what we use for the oil in the car. But of my 300, I'm choosing what am I trying to improve. And then I select my KPIs. I don't need 300 graphs. I've got to be able to select. So, at the start of our year, we do an exercise which the Japanese call Hoshin Kanri. These are the strategic thrusts for my company this year. We identify from them our must-win battles, and the executive sets its goals. Then we cascade it down and we say, if they're to achieve those, what must the next level achieve to help them? And so in turn, until we get to the front line. And I'm looking for taking my company forward. Not routine things, not even putting petrol in my car, because if I fill the tank every time it's empty, at the end of the year, I have made no progress. So, bottom line is all 5 areas must be represented. How many goals in each area? Ideally 1, maybe 1 or 2. The others we're still tracking, but we use an alternative method. I called it the traffic lights or warning lights. If you speak to an accountant, every month he'll get a printout of usages. And he'll get price variances, and he'll get usage variances. And he sees, like the traffic light, there was a problem there, and he investigates. But he doesn't have a graph for every line item. We've got to get our mind away from what is the most important, and we've got to ask what is the key driver for my company strategy.
Very useful. What I like about these 5 dimensions that you were talking about, quality, speed, cost, safety, and people, is that you are helping your team to focus on the key stakeholders that the business has. So that's very relevant, and it's also important. That's very good.
If every team has a quality goal, or every team has a safety goal, it's much easier to get goal alignment too.
Wonderful, wonderful, Ian. Very useful indeed. Can you give us examples of bad goals that you have seen?
Unfortunately, yes. And I'm sure our listeners are going to identify with one of these, at least. I don't know which one, but let me give a few examples. I was at an HR department in South America, and I asked them what were their KPIs. And one of the KPIs they quoted to me was average time to fill a vacancy. Now that makes sense. HR department is putting ads out, screening people, and finding employees. But average time? What I said to them is if it takes you a week to find a laboratory technician, and it takes you 9 months to find a financial analyst, and you need 3 technicians and 1 analyst, the average is pretty good. But you've missed 2 triggers. If I can get a laboratory technician in 1 week, maybe I could get a higher qualified technician. Maybe I'm paying too much. But that information is lost in the index. If it takes me nearly a year to find my financial analyst, that's unacceptable. Maybe I should be taking in interns, giving scholarships at the local university, advertising in the next country. But all of these triggers are lost because we took an average. Another one I saw at a sugar terminal. They were measuring the average turnaround time for a truck coming into the yard. Now that's great. But if one truck takes 2 hours and others are taking 20 minutes, we could have learned something. We should surely be looking at the extremes at the top and the bottom and turning those into powerful KPIs. The SPC people were not fools. Years ago, when they told us we should be measuring X bar, the average, and R, the range, because the range alerts us that there are these outliers. And yet so many KPIs take an average number and they lose the learning. They don't have the power. There's also blind spots, I guess. I was at a factory and their products go out the door and they have checkers before the truck reaches the street. And they check what's loaded on the truck. They punch it into the computer, and if that's what should have been on the truck is released. So I asked these checkers, I said, so what is your speed measure? And they said, trucks checked per day. And how many trucks did you check yesterday? 24. Very good. Why didn't you check 25? They said, oh, there only were 24. And I said, so that's not your measure. That's how fast they worked in the warehouse, loading the trucks. Your measure should have been, how long does it take me to check a truck? Wrong measure. So I went to the warehouse the same day. I asked them, what is your speed measure? They said, trucks loaded per day. How many trucks did you load yesterday? Yes, you guessed it, 24. Why didn't you load 25? We only had orders for 24. And I say, aha, so that's not your speed measure. That's how fast the salesman was selling products. So really, their measure should have been time taken to load a truck. We get these blind spots. And as with all weaker KPIs, they're all well-intentioned. But we've got to think. We've got to take it past. There's another whole area of bad goals. And these are goals where we don't consider horizontal goal alignment. We don't consider the people upstream or downstream in my product. I see procurement teams who are measured on the savings that they squeeze out of their suppliers. The more they save, the better they perform. And all around the company, we have people complaining that the paper is poorer quality, that the computers are lousy, that the spares for the vehicles are pirate spares, because procurement was incentivized to save cost. They thought of themselves. We have maintenance departments measured on cost of maintenance. Now, it's easy to save on maintenance, but the maintenance is not so good. We see sales departments measured on sales volume. And so they will sell anything they can in uneconomical quantities to clients who don't pay, who live in remote areas. We can't deliver the damn thing, but they get a sales bonus. I've seen marketing applying frills to a product. We'd like a little bow around the top. We'd like a free toy in the cornflakes. We'd like a scoop in the baby formula. And the poor production department's got to arrange this. Their efficiencies go down 5% and marketing gets a bonus. Every one of these, the goals were set by well-meaning workers who were stuck within their own silo. How can I do my job better instead of, is this best for the company? So as I say, unfortunately, weak goals are everywhere, but we can do better.
Yes, certainly we can. And it is so interesting to see how each of these examples that you have given us link directly to the few guidelines you gave us previously about setting good targets. The lack of line of vision, that they're not for improvement. All of them are inside each of these examples you gave us.
Absolutely, Rosa, absolutely.
Okay, Ian, so You gave us a set of examples just now, but can you give us example of what we should be measuring then?
Yes, I guess I can. I've spent most of the time talking about what to beware of, because there isn't that magic silver bullet we spoke about. So I can't say a finance department must measure this. But we can look at good ones and we can look at bad ones. Let's try and identify the good ones for a change. I'll do it by considering a couple of scenarios. Scenario 1. Our customers are complaining at late deliveries. So we make a graph up, late deliveries. And we tell the teams, this performance must improve. They can do nothing. This is what we call a lag indicator. What is the cause of the late delivery? Are the trucks breaking down? In which case, what we should be managing is maintenance schedules for the trucks. Are the drivers getting lost? We should be working on better directions. Is it taking us too long to load the trucks? We should be working on warehouse organization and clear signage. Those are the powerful KPIs. Late deliveries is not a powerful. It's important, but it's a lag indicator. It's not powerful. Let's consider another scenario. My daily production is too low. Why is the production too low? Well, there are causes. Maybe my changeover times are too long. It's taking me 2 hours to change from product A to product B instead of 10 minutes. Maybe the workers take too long in getting the line up and running in the morning. Maybe the maintenance schedules are not being done. Those are the powerful indicators. Units per day, lag indicator, not so powerful. So as a general rule, if I'm trying to manage a lag indicator, I try and solve the problem. What are the key drivers that lead to that result? Once I've identified the drivers, I select which ones I'm going to manage, and that becomes my powerful KPI. I might work on a powerful KPI for only 2 weeks. And if I've solved the problem, find another one. It doesn't need to be a 12-month goal. The lag indicator for my manager, maybe. But the powerful indicator is usually the one that's closest to the root cause.
Okay, Ian. So we have covered a good amount of information so far. But I am wondering, how should a team react when a goal is not achieved?
Yeah, this is a good question, because in a traditional mindset, we want to see green or blue on all our graphs. But when we see green or blue, we're seeing conformance. And our powerful KPIs are not measuring conformance. Did he do it right? Yes or no? These are improvement KPIs, as I've said so often. And whenever we see a red on our graph, we have another lead. We're like the detective. Another case. Great. Maybe we'll catch the guy now. We want to see the reds. We put the trigger at such a critical level that we will see reds. And every time we see a red, we link that to our problem-solving methodology. Whether it's a simple 5 whys or whether we're going into an advanced Kaizen project, it must be part of the process. This is the lead that is going to crack our problem. And to that end, we need a mindset in our company that when anything is not normal, we're going to chase it and see it as a lead, whether it's our power KPI or not. I was at a motor manufacturer some years ago. I remember we were walking down the side of his factory, and he stopped and said, "Shh." The air conditioning unit was making strange sound. As soon as we got to destination, he picked up the telephone and reported it. You see, That was fantastic. That was the mindset that when something's not going right, we can learn, we can take action. I had an engineering manager in a factory I worked at. When he retired, one of my team followed him in his morning routine. Every time he stopped, we asked him, "So what are you looking at?" I remember we had a refrigeration plant and there was ice on the outside of a pipe. And he would look at the ice level and he said, "You know, if the ice drops below there, we need to top up the ammonia or glycol." He knew something wasn't right. That's the mindset. And of course, the graphs that we're doing are exactly that. These are our improvement graphs. Whenever we have a red, we have a lead. We don't want failures, but we want leads. And to that end, the leads must be visual. No point in having all these papers filed in a big, thick lever arch file, or having them in a computer program on a spreadsheet that we can access. It must be in my face. The same as we see in the detective's control room. This is going to make us world class. And on the KPIs, if it's a power KPI and there's a red on that graph, you don't ignore that. When that trigger goes off, it's not optional. You must take action because you've identified that is the key driver of my 300. Remember, that is the driver of my most important performance indicator. So that's what we do. Okay, Rosa, let's sum up what we've done. I've tried to give you a little insight into what we actually measure. We're never going to solve this. We're never going to get to the end. And we're fighting against an existing system and practices. Think of the top salesman who is selling at 110% of budget. Is he going to make a special effort to help the salesman who's selling at 80% of budget increase to 90? Or will he try and go from 110 to 112? He thinks of himself because the measures we have for rewarding salesmen are based on personal sales. We're fighting against situations like that. The storeman is told to look after the inventory in his stores. He is measuring inventory accuracy. But that storeman would make far more money if he became part of a project group to reduce inventory, improve stock turns, instead of measuring inventory accuracy. The more we're all aware of these things, the better we'll become. Experience is key, but the process is iterative. I worked at a site in India a couple of years ago. We worked with the quality department. It was difficult coming up with goals for the quality department. But we came up with a set. I went back 2 months later. We had sucked and seen. We found they weren't working, so we changed them again. My clients were pulling their hair out. They said, "Wait, but you told us this 2 months ago." We've got to recognize it's a continuous improvement process. Every time we set them, we put a stake in the ground, and next time we'll get better. It's difficult. It's so difficult to identify meaningful, powerful KPIs for quality assurance, for HR, for marketing, for the continuous improvement teams even. But it must be done. We are all party to improving performance. And once we've identified the KPIs, we benefit. If you can identify those magic buttons, as I call them, the drivers for the results, we will then support the strategic thrusts and the must-win battles that the company's trying to get. But there's no experience, I'm afraid, no substitute for experience and common sense.
Well, Based on our discussion today, I would like to highlight some of the key elements mentioned. Things that come to my mind. Number one, KPIs, powerful KPIs are magic buttons. They are not obvious and finding them is not easy. Number two, designing powerful KPIs is an iterative process. Number three, it is one thing to establish KPIs and another one to use them to drive decisions and improvements on an ongoing basis. 4, selecting KPIs is science, but also common sense and experience. And lastly, having business goals for teams does not mean there is alignment amongst those teams. Ian, thank you for that summary. Very much knowledge indeed.
Pleasure. I enjoyed it, Rosa.
If you have any questions that we did not answer on our platform, please send them to us by email. Ian and I will be happy to respond. For those of you who stayed until the end of this conversation, there is an item of interest for you to download. And please help us to improve future webinars. Respond the poll available for you before you leave. Thank you so much again, and we will see you next time. Bye.